All right, we are coming at you guys with the first season in review video of the off season. We will have about 20 plus videos, 20 to 25 videos with a different team featured in every single one of these videos. We will talk about their unique situation. We will talk about the highs and the lows of the season. We will be grading every single one of these teams across the depth chart and looking forward to the next season. Our team featured today, as you can see by the thumbnail, is the Oregon Ducks. We will do everything I just mentioned with them, and it's going to be a great time. We will probably feature your team. We have teams from the Big Ten, teams from the SEC, teams from the Big 12, and the ACC, including some other teams thrown in there as well, not from the Power 4 level. But hey, remain with me here. This is going to be a fun episode. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to start off looking back on this season, and I'm just giving my brief overall thoughts on the season. And this season showed me that Oregon is primed to be the big dogs for a long time. Dan Lanning has built a program out there. I am very confident that they will be winning national championships within the next couple years, multiple, in my opinion. And they are, as a program, right there with the rest of them, the other ones. They're not a blue blood because obviously they haven't won any national championships, but I think by the end of the year 2035, in 10 years from now, I think that they can be right there along with all these other programs having, three, four, five national champions under their belt within the next 10 years. I think that that is entirely possible with this team, the way they have been recruiting, the way that they have been coached, how Dan Lanning is one of the younger coaches in this coaching tree, I guess you could say, this large college football coaching tree. And I think that just they're primed to have a big success in the Big Ten. On the team as a whole for this past year, they were elite seemingly everywhere. They did not really have a weakness, and they had elite players pretty much everywhere on the field. Like I said, they're set up for long term success, and it was a great overall season. They just had their bad game at the worst possible time in the Rose Bowl. They came out thinking that they could run the same thing that they did against Ohio State in the first matchup. Did not end up well. You can really have a bad game in this new format, but their bad game was in the playoff where it really mattered. And excuse me. It was a shame that it happened and it had to go down that way, but it should be a learning period for Dan Lanning for the future. Okay, moving back to my positional grades for the season. We'll have one for the offense and the defense. So for the offense here, I gave coaching an A. Just everything that offensive coordinator Will Stein is doing is great. He's a top 3 offensive coordinator in college football. He should be taking a very prominent head coaching job within the next couple years. I compare him to he's the Ben Johnson. If you know Ben Johnson, he's the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. He is the Ben Johnson of college football. He's creative, explosive, and he commands a very well-run spread offense. At quarterback, you have obviously Dillon Gabriel. He gets an A. He's a Heisman finalist, threw for over 3,850 yards this season with 30 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. He is as efficient as you can get. And his worst game, yes, did happen to be the Rose Bowl, but that cannot diminish what he did this season. He is an A quarterback if I've ever seen one. Honestly, he's being very underrated in the NFL draft right now. I think he is a first-round talent. I think that he is a very good quarterback under a very good system. At running back, I also gave this an A. People forget what these two running backs have done. Jordan James and Noah Whittingham have been one of the best duos in college football. Jordan James has been one of the best running backs in college football with over 1,200 yards on the ground with 15 touchdowns. Noah Whittingham follows that up with over 500 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns. The two combined over 1,700 yards. They're great. They do, this isn't a run first team at all. For them to be accumulating that many yards really speaks to, first of all, the volume of offensive plays Oregon runs, but second of all, just the talent that these two players have, and Oregon has been churning out some very decent running backs as of late. You look back to Bucky Irving from last year. Just some overall great talent at running back that goes underrated most of the time. At receiver, this is where they make their this is where they make their money right here at receiver. I gave it an A grade. Obviously, you got Trayshawn Holden with over 700 receiving yards. Tez Johnson leading the way with just under 900 yards. He was 2 yards shy of 900. Evan Stewart, who will be coming back for this 2025 upcoming season, that's a huge retention for them. He had 600 yards. Obviously, some of these guys, were out, be that suspended or injured. So these weren't a 12 game sample per se for some of these players, but that's what we're dealing with here. At tight end, I gave it a B plus. I was fluctuating between an A minus, B plus. Terrence Ferguson is not a Tyler Warren type tight end. He is not a Kyle Pitts level talent, but he's a very solid player. He tallied 591 receiving yards with 3 receiving touchdowns this past season, and he's a very solid player, a very solid tight end, a guy that I think will go within the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. So I gave the tight end position a B plus. Last position group, the offensive line. I A minus. It was on the edge. I went back and forth on this, but I think A minus is an appropriate grade for them. They performed very well throughout the season. They limited the sacks. They were pretty darn good in run blocking. Guys like Ajaji Cornelius and Josh Connolly Jr. at tackle. Josh Connolly Jr. especially will probably get drafted very high in the NFL draft. The guards were a little bit suspect. Nishad Strother and Dave Yulee were a little bit suspect, but Yapani Laluli at center was really, really good as a sophomore. So this offensive line, it wasn't one of one, but it was pretty darn good. All right, moving to the defensive side of the ball. This was honestly a really, really good defense this past year. So their coaching was an A. I think Dan Lanning did a really good job controlling that defense all season long. Josh Lepoy, the defensive coordinator, I know he has had some scrutiny uh, for his game plan going into the Rose Bowl, and I get that. He fully deserves a lot of the blame for that Rose Bowl loss because that was his defensive game plan that he drew up, and then obviously Dan Lanning signing off on it. But I think overall in the season, you can't judge the whole season based off of one game. So that's what I'll say to Oregon fans. Don't judge the whole season based off of one game. This was a really good season overall. So coaching, I gave it an A. It was an A plus going into that Rose Bowl game, but then obviously the Rose Bowl game happened. Let's move on. At the D line, you got some really, really good players like Mateo Uyunglele, Derek Harmon, Jamari Caldwell, and Jordan Burch on the other side, rushing the edge on the other side of Mateo Uyunglele. Mateo led the team in sacks. He had double digits. That he had 10.5. Jordan Burch had 8.5, and Derek Harmon had 5. So that is 20 plus sacks right there from those 3 guys combined. They were extremely effective against the run, and this D line nets an A grade. The linebackers, honestly, are kind of the unsung heroes of this team. Guys like Bryce Bodicher and Jeffrey Bossa. These 2 guys, especially, are really, really good. Bodicher led the team in tackles. He had 50 solo tackles, first on the team, and 94 total tackles, also first on the team. And when you have a guy that's making that many tackles, anything else you get from that guy is a plus. And he also contributed with 2 sacks and an interception, along with 4 passes defended. So this is a stud right here that just played out of his mind for the Oregon Ducks all season long. So I really did like this linebacker room. Jeffrey Bossa didn't really put up better stats than Bryce Bodicher. He didn't really put up the game record stats that I just brought up for Bryce Bodicher, but he was a really good compliment for Bodicher. All right, at corner, I gave them a grade, right there. Not Tez Johnson. Tysheem Johnson. That's my bad. Tysheem Johnson led the team at strong safety with 3 interceptions. He was really good. Nico Reed, the senior transfer at corner, had 2, and he was very good. I mean, that's the one thing they didn't they didn't haul in a ton of interceptions, but these guys were really, really good in defending the pass, whether that be man or zone. Guys like Brendan Johnson, Jabbar Muhammad, these guys are really good at corner. At safety, we already touched on the strong safety, Tyshim Johnson leading the team in interceptions, but Kobe Savage as well was really, really good. And by the way, most all these guys will get drafted into the NFL. They may not be first or second or third round picks per se, but they will all be contributing factors to an NFL team. So that's a big sign of success. When your whole secondary is getting drafted, that means that you're doing something right. Okay, so now we go to the overall grades here. Coaching, I gave it an A minus, chiefly because in the number one game, the game that you have to win, there was a coaching implosion in the Rose Bowl, and that is what caused them to. It was entirely coaching. I mean, the players went out and executed what they thought was a pretty good playbook that they had drawn up for the Rose Bowl game. It ended up being the worst playbook, play calling. I don't know what you want to call it, but it was an abject disaster. So coaching is an A minus. The offense and defense both get A grades. Special teams get a B plus. Atticus was really good at kicker, excuse me. And this nets an A team grade. Obviously, I grade coaching and special teams a little bit different than the whole offense or the whole defense. So I think this team was an A grade team this whole past year, and I think you would agree with me if you take the whole year into consideration. Okay, moving to the highs of the season. So when the team was at their highest, this is what was happening. A perfect regular season beating multiple double-digit win teams. I mean, they beat teams. Obviously, they beat Ohio State in the regular season. That was a really good win. They beat Boise State, which ended up being a top 10 team. They beat, Illinois. Illinois ended up being a 10-win team. Again, they blew out Michigan. Michigan ended up being an 8-win team. So they beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. So they beat some really good teams. It wasn't like they had a cakewalk. So and that's a perfect segue into winning the Big Ten championship game in their first season in the Big Ten against the Penn State Nittany Lions. That game was honestly one of the best games of the college football season, probably a top 3 game in the college football season overall. So obviously with the national championship right there as well, I think that this was a really, really good win for Oregon as a program to get that first Big Ten championship in their first year. They're 1 of 1 so far. They're looking to be 2 of 2 next year. Excuse me. And they were objectively the best team in the nation for almost 3 months. Around 3 months. They were the number 1 team for a long time, and they were a top 3 team for pretty much the whole year. So that's not something you take lightly, especially again your first year in a new conference, in a better conference, a more diverse conference in terms of play style and play calling. They had to play every different type of team, so I think that it's really an accomplishment that they were the number 1 team for multiple weeks in a row, almost 3 months worth of being number 1. Okay, so now we go to the lows of the season. Pretty much every single one of these has to do with losing to Ohio State because there were no lows in the regular season pretty much at all. So that's how we have to play it. They played their worst game of the season in the playoff. That's 100% true. And honestly, we covered that a lot throughout this video. They fell short of the national championship because those were definitely the expectations were to get to the national championship after the season that they had, and they did not come close to making those expectations, which is, again, sad, but again, shows where they are as a program. When you're expecting to win national championships, that shows that you're in a pretty good place. That's what I would say. And obviously, getting humiliated by Ohio State in round 2, the hubris of the Oregon coaching staff to just think they could waltz right into Pasadena, California, and just throw the same exact thing that they threw at Ohio State in the first round and just replay it in the second round and think it would go the exact same way. No, Ohio State's coaching staff is elite, and they are going to game plan differently. They're going to make adjustments, and that is something that the Oregon coaching staff did not do, was make adjustments. So those were the lows of the season. Okay, so here's the last segment of this video. Be sure to subscribe, as it is the best and most efficient way to support the channel and everything that we do here. There will be tons of these videos coming out in the next couple weeks and month. I want to run this series basically until about February. Then we'll get into some early prediction stuff like that, and that's going to be a ton of fun as well. There is no off season on this channel. We put out a ton of interesting content all the time, so just subscribe. That's really the main thing that I want you guys to do. Comment your thoughts down below if you disagree with me. If you agree with me, comment them down below. Like the video as well. It would mean a lot to me. Right now, we're looking at improvements that I personally am looking for next season with the Oregon Ducks, and really, it's hard to look for improvements when you have a perfect season. But win that darn playoff game. Come on, guys. Let's win a playoff game. Let's win multiple playoff games. Let's win the national championship. That's where this program is. And that's what this program can do. And, I'm hoping that Dante Moore continues the quarterback success. I have a good feeling he will. I saw Trayshawn Holden put out on X that he, meaning Dante Moore, is the best pure passer that he's ever seen. So that's something we're gonna see that pretty soon. I think because Dante Moore is gonna be QB1 next year, and like we said, make that national championship game. That's all I have to say for this video. We will be covering some very interesting teams. So not everything is an A minus grade. There's a little bit of subjectivity to these upcoming teams that we will be previewing. Hint: we're going to be looking at teams like Florida, Nebraska, Indiana, some really interesting teams as well. You might be seeing some Tennessee in there, some Colorado, maybe. I'm just saying it might happen. And I will see you guys in the next one.